It was supposed to be a system that helped speed up the legal process, allowing lower-level crimes like not paying your TV licence to be dealt with quickly and not add to the hundreds of thousands of backlogged cases clogging up our criminal courts. But a joint investigation between ITV News and the Evening Standard has uncovered flaws in the single justice procedure that are leading to people being wrongly prosecuted. Our correspondent Peter Smith now on the system that's prioritising speed over justice.
Just a few days before Christmas last year, Jenny took her baby girl into hospital. She wasn't feeding properly, but baby Scarlett's condition worsened suddenly and entirely unexpectedly.
The paediatrician came in and said, he said, I think you need to come back through. We're doing everything that we can. My whole mind was just on praying, begging her to stay and to wake up, or for her heart to start, and just for her not to leave.
You were holding her hands when she passed away?
Yeah.
Baby Scarlett was just 3 months old. In the time between seeing her baby die and then the funeral, Jenny's car insurance had lapsed for one single day before she remembered to renew it. Jenny was still grieving her daughter's death when a letter arrived, telling her she was being prosecuted.
Your case will be dealt with under the single justice procedure.
This single justice procedure is a fast-track system for low-level offences. In a court, Jenny could have been given legal advice to plead not guilty due to her circumstances, and she'd be given the chance to explain what happened. But that is not the case in this procedure, done entirely on paper.
I felt completely signposted to plead guilty.
And you wrote to the court and you explained the mitigating circumstances. You told them exactly why that the insurance had lapsed, that you weren't trying to get away with anything, you weren't trying to dodge anything.
No, I put in the mitigating circumstances. I didn't have insurance for the one day, so I thought, yeah, I'm guilty. So I'll tick guilty and then just say what happened, and I'm sure they'll understand.
So you said, I'm guilty, but here's the reasons why it happened, and you were hoping that would be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
We can tell you that you were actually convicted, even though you wrote back with your mitigating circumstances to tell them what happened.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Upset and angry, because they've overlooked my child's death by doing that. They've not acknowledged that my child's died. This is the most extreme, horrible thing that's happened in my life, and I would absolutely think that is a mitigating circumstance.
This fast-track system that convicted Jenny is used for 40,000 cases every month in England and Wales. Just last month, the same system was under scrutiny when 74,000 people were told their prosecutions for alleged rail fare evasion could be overturned. Now, in a joint investigation between ITV News and the Evening Standard, we've identified flaws in other single justice procedure cases, mainly for DVLA offences like Jenny's and also TV licensing. We started by asking a panel of 4 criminal barristers to independently review Jenny's conviction. They were unanimous. It was not in the public interest to prosecute her, and they all agreed if Jenny had access to a lawyer in open court, it would have had a different outcome. But Jenny's is not an isolated case. We selected 50 more cases where people with strong mitigating circumstances had been convicted in this procedure. The panel of lawyers found almost 3/4 were not in the public interest to prosecute, and nearly 2/3 would have had a different outcome with a lawyer in open court.
We found an example here of an elderly man who was prosecuted despite the fact that he was in hospital undergoing open heart surgery when he was accused of missing a payment. Another man here with learning disabilities, he said he tried to pay his TV licence, but he was struggling with the computer system. His mum paid it on his behalf, but he was still prosecuted. And here we found one case that we can now reveal that the single justice procedure has convicted a man who didn't respond to the letter, but he couldn't because he was already dead.
These cases are being decided by magistrates who are volunteers, we took our findings to their association.
But there was no response because he was already dead.
They admit to us mistakes are happening because prosecutors don't even read the explanations from the people they are trying to convict.
There isn't that process of the prosecuting authority deciding whether it passes the public interest test based on what has been written by the defendant. That should happen.
People might think that that's a cornerstone of justice. Is it in the interests of justice? Is it in the public interest to prosecute this person? But we have a legal system here where that's not happening.
At the moment, that's not happening, and it should happen. And that's one of the recommendations, one of the most important recommendations that we're asking for change to happen.
How is it possible that someone who's died can be prosecuted in this single justice procedure system?
Well, clearly, it shouldn't be the case that happened, and needs to be looked at as to whether checks need to be improved to make sure that people who are prosecuted are not deceased.
Tristan Kirk at the Evening Standard has been investigating this legal system for the last 4 years. He's uncovered evidence of the single justice procedure wrongfully convicting children, and he thinks speed is being prioritised over justice.
You find that magistrates are taking less and less time over the decisions that they're taking. Some cases being dealt with in 45 seconds, which...
45 seconds?
45 seconds.
That's not even possible to read the mitigated circumstances in that.
It really confirms this suspicion that people have had all along, is that this is a conveyor belt of justice, rubber stamping people's convictions and fines without giving them the individual consideration that they really deserve.
This single justice procedure was first introduced to speed up magistrate court decisions back in 2015. Lord Thomas was head of the courts in England and Wales at that time. We showed him our analysis.
It's upsetting because they've overlooked my child's death.
And he told us he is disappointed to see it has not been reformed.
Does it raise concerns about the single justice procedure carrying on in its current form?
Yes. I think it is clear from what I've seen, from what the Magistrates Association are saying, that there are aspects of this procedure, very important aspects, that need reviewing. Fixing this is not difficult. It really is something that the Ministry and the prosecuting authorities ought to consider with a degree of urgency.
It's overdue now.
Yes.
Our investigation has uncovered evidence of a system convicting people who should not have been prosecuted. Some have been fined, some will pay more for insurance for the rest of their lives, because their explanations and pleas for compassion haven't even been read by those prosecuting them. And despite the flaws we have exposed, this system continues, unreformed, to convict thousands in our courts every week.
Well, Peter joins me now. Peter, Jenny's situation is particularly heartbreaking. What have the DVLA had to say?
Well, I think what we've seen here is that this isn't akin to what we saw with the post office scandal and the way that the convictions aren't ruining people's lives on the same scale. But what is similar is that the ability, the power to prosecute is being outsourced to organisations. In this case, as you say, the DVLA, TV Licensing Authority, through the BBC. And in response to our investigation, I spoke to someone in the DVLA, a senior source there, who told me off the record that in many of the cases that they're seeing prosecuted leading to convictions, if they were aware of the mitigating circumstances, they would not have carried on with the prosecution. This is the key. They're not having the opportunity to see that. So in a formal statement, they told us that all prosecutions brought about by the DVLA, if they are progressed to the single justice procedure, a defendant can request a hearing in open court. That would mean ticking the not guilty box. But those pleading guilty, including those with mitigating action, are then considered by the magistrate. As I say, at that point, if you tick guilty, you've effectively already convicted yourself. They say these can be referred back to the DVLA, but whether or not to do so is a decision taken by the magistrates. Now, in response to that, the Magistrates Association is saying, well, we're so overwhelmed, we are not having the time and the ability to read these thousands of cases, 40,000 cases a month, being prosecuted in England and Wales through single justice procedure. They are calling for reforms that would mean the prosecuting authorities, the DVLA and the TV Licensing Authority, would have to read the explanations from those that they're trying to prosecute.
OK, so you touched on it there. The BBC has similar powers through to prosecute people when it comes to TV licences. So what have they had to say something similar to the DVLA?
That's right, and Charlie, and the cases that we had reviewed independently were a mix of DVLA offences and TV licensing offences. So we went to the TV licensing through the BBC. A spokesperson told us that their primary aim is to help people stay licensed and avoid prosecution, which they say is always a last resort. They say where appropriate, they have the ability to halt a prosecution or overturn a conviction if they're made aware of new and compelling information. Now, we will be making them aware of the information that we have found in our investigation.
Yes, that you've uncovered. Now, the Magistrates Association, they admitted to you that mistakes are happening. Are there any signs that the Ministry of Justice are listening and want to try and modify the system?
Well, both the Magistrates Association and also the former Lord Chief Justice, Lord Thomas, who essentially was overseeing the introduction of the single justice procedure. He was the most senior judge in the land at the time that it was introduced, have told us that it needs to be not just reviewed but reformed, and Lord Thomas said with a degree of urgency and said it's overdue. Now, we went to the Ministry of Justice with this, and they said that the single justice procedure was designed to allow low-level offences to be dealt with simply and without people having to go to court unless they choose to do so. They say the decision to prosecute cases under SGP is made by the prosecuting authority, as I say, the DVLA or TV licensing in this case, and they say the government is reviewing what more can be done to support vulnerable defendants, as well as how to improve oversight and regulation. I went back to them and said specifically, you're saying this is an ongoing review, but what do you say in response to the calls for urgent reforms? They didn't respond to that. They haven't agreed to do an interview with us on this. But on the issue that we've also highlighted here of someone being prosecuted and convicted after they were already dead, the Ministry of Justice told us that that should not be happening, and that when someone who has died has been prosecuted, that prosecution will be void if they're made aware of that in the process. So we're hoping that that can also lead to change for the families who have been affected by that in that way. I think what's important for us to say here is that this is not something that's historical. All of the cases we've reviewed are recent, in the last year, many of them in the last 6 months. I think we're also seeing that they're still ongoing. We will be continuing to look at this, and I think also important to say, Jenny Beasley, who we spoke to in our report, she's not alone, but she wanted to tell us that actually the report going out today, this would have been her baby Scarlett's first birthday. And she has had the courage to say she wants to go ahead with this. She asked us to tell this story on this day because she says she wants change to be delivered so that other people don't have to go through what she's going through.
A very important day. Peter, thank you very much.